Everyone, my name is Elizabeth Jaquinto Friedman, and I am a regulatory counsel in the Division of Policy Development in the Office of Generic Drug Policy. Today I'm going to provide an overview on evaluating therapeutic equivalence. There are three main learning objectives for this presentation, and those objectives are to outline the fundamentals of therapeutic equivalence, describe what FDA considers in therapeutic equivalence evaluations, and describe how FDA makes therapeutic equivalence determinations. We'll move right into the fundamentals of therapeutic equivalence. Drug products that are therapeutic equivalents can be substituted with the full expectation that the substituted product will produce the same clinical effect and safety profile as the prescribed product. Therapeutic equivalence evaluations are listed in the FDA publication, Approved Drug Products with Therapeutic Equivalence Evaluations, better known as the Orange Book, for multi-source prescription drug products approved under Section 505 of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. FDA's therapeutic equivalence evaluations have been prepared to serve as public information and advice to state health agencies, prescribers, and pharmacists. The scientific and regulatory foundations for the evaluation of therapeutic equivalence of prescription drug products are pharmaceutical equivalence, bioequivalence, and the same clinical effect and safety profile for the conditions of use specified in the labeling. To be therapeutically equivalent, drug products must be pharmaceutically equivalent. Pharmaceutical equivalents are defined as drug products that are identical in dosage form and route of administration, that contain identical amounts of the identical active drug ingredient, that do not necessarily contain the same inactive ingredients, and that meet the identical compendial or other applicable standards of identity, strength, quality, and purity, including potency. To be therapeutically equivalent, drug products must also be bioequivalent. Bioequivalence is the absence of a significant difference in the rate and extent to which the active ingredient or active moiety in pharmaceutical equivalents or pharmaceutical alternatives becomes available at the site of drug action when administered at the same molar dose under similar conditions in an appropriately designed study. And as a reminder to those listening, FDA has promulgated regulations regarding demonstrating bioequivalence, and we routinely publish guidances for industry and product-specific guidances to assist with demonstrating bioequivalence. Therapeutic equivalent drug products are expected to have the same clinical effect and safety profile when administered to patients under the conditions of use specified in the labeling. FDA's evaluation of whether drug products meet this prong of therapeutic equivalence is product-specific. As noted earlier, only those drug products approved under Section 505 of the FD&C Act are eligible for therapeutic equivalence evaluations. In this presentation, we're going to focus on drug products approved under abbreviated new drug applications, ANDAs, and drug products approved under Section 505(b)(2) applications. An ANDA is an application submitted and approved under Section 505J of the FD&C Act for a drug product that is a duplicate of a previously approved drug product. The term duplicate generally refers to a drug product that has the same active ingredient or ingredients, dosage form, strength, route of administration, and conditions of use as a listed drug. An approved ANDA is generally therapeutically equivalent to its RLD because the requirements for ANDA approval include the data and information that establish therapeutic equivalence. I'll note here that there is an exception for an ANDA based on an approved suitability petition, and I'll talk more about this exception later. A 505(b)(2) application is a new drug application that contains full reports of investigations of safety and effectiveness, where at least some of the information required for approval comes from studies not conducted by or for the applicant, and for which the applicant has not obtained a right of reference or use. Examples are the agency's finding of safety and/or effectiveness for a listed drug and published literature. The differences between a product approved in a 505(b)(2) application and a listed drug generally preclude a finding that the products are therapeutically equivalent. These differences may include, for example, a different active ingredient or a new indication, dosage form, strength, or route of administration, or certain formulation differences. However, FDA may determine that an approved 505(b)(2) drug product is therapeutically equivalent to another listed drug if the drug product is pharmaceutically equivalent to the listed drug, bioequivalent to the listed drug, and there is, as needed, other data and information demonstrating that the drug product can be expected to have the same clinical effect and safety profile as the listed drug when administered to patients under the conditions specified in the labeling. FDA lists its therapeutic equivalence evaluations in the Orange Book using a system of lettered codes assigned to individual drug products. These codes allow users to determine quickly whether the agency has evaluated a particular approved drug product as therapeutically equivalent to another approved pharmaceutically equivalent drug product. The coding system uses specific letters to provide additional information based on FDA's evaluations. Drug products are assigned an A as the first letter of their therapeutic equivalence code if FDA considers them to be therapeutically equivalent to other pharmaceutically equivalent drug products. For A-rated products, the second letter in the code identifies that actual or potential bioequivalence problems have been resolved with adequate evidence, or there are no known or suspected bioequivalence problems, and that second letter identifies the dosage form. Drug products are assigned a B as the first letter of their therapeutic equivalence code if FDA considers them not to be therapeutically equivalent to other pharmaceutically equivalent products. For B-rated products, the second letter in the code either identifies the dosage form or provides further general information regarding why the product is not considered to be therapeutically equivalent. Now we'll move into the therapeutic equivalence determinations. Because the approval standards for ANDAs require, among other things, a demonstration of pharmaceutical equivalence to its RLD, bioequivalence to its RLD, and generally the same labeling as its RLD, a generic drug is considered therapeutically equivalent to its RLD upon approval. The therapeutic equivalence code for an approved ANDA will be listed with the approved ANDA when it is added to the Orange Book. The ANDA holder does not need to request a therapeutic equivalence evaluation. There are situations in which a drug product approved in an ANDA would not have a therapeutic equivalence code. For example, if an RLD is discontinued or withdrawn from sale for reasons other than safety or effectiveness, and the approved ANDA drug product that references that RLD becomes a single source product, that RLD and any assigned therapeutic equivalence code for the ANDA is removed from the Orange Book until approval of subsequent ANDAs or therapeutically equivalent 505(b)(2) applications. The other exception is for a drug product approved in an ANDA that was based on an approved suitability petition. That drug product would not be pharmaceutically equivalent to its RLD and, therefore, would not be therapeutically equivalent to the RLD. A drug product approved in a 505(b)(2) application that meets the criteria for therapeutic equivalence may receive an appropriate therapeutic equivalence code. For FDA to evaluate therapeutic equivalence for an approved 505(b)(2) drug product, the applicant must demonstrate that its product is pharmaceutically equivalent, bioequivalent, and is expected to have the same clinical effect and safety profile as the reference drug when administered to patients under the conditions specified in the labeling. FDA generally assesses therapeutic equivalence utilizing information that is contained in the NDA file. FDA will generally assign a therapeutic equivalence code for a 505(b)(2) drug product only after approval and upon receipt of such request from the 505(b)(2) application holder. We recommend that this request is submitted in a citizen petition. An approved 505(b)(2) drug product listed in the Orange Book would not have a therapeutic equivalence code if the drug product is not pharmaceutically equivalent or therapeutically equivalent to the listed drug it references. For example, it is not a pharmaceutical equivalent because it is for a strength not approved for the listed drug, or the application holder has not made a request for and FDA has not conducted a therapeutic equivalence evaluation for the 505(b)(2) drug product. So with that, we'll wrap up our overview of the evaluation of therapeutic equivalence, and we'll move into the challenge questions. Our first challenge question focuses on those foundations of therapeutic equivalence. Which of the following is not fundamental to therapeutic equivalence evaluations? A, pharmaceutical equivalence, B, bioequivalence, C, clinical effect and safety profile, or D, the date of approval? The answer is D, the date of approval. Our second challenge question is, when is a therapeutic equivalence code listed in the Orange Book for a drug product approved in a 505(b)(2) application? Is it A, automatically upon approval of the drug product, B, following an FDA assessment of therapeutic equivalence upon tentative approval, C, following an FDA assessment or therapeutic equivalence upon receipt of a request from the application holder, or D, after approval of an ANDA referencing the same listed drug? And the answer here is C. A TE code for a 505(b)(2) application is generally published in the Orange Book following an FDA assessment of therapeutic equivalence upon receipt of a request from the application holder. So to summarize this presentation, therapeutic equivalence depends on three things: pharmaceutical equivalence, bioequivalence, and having the same clinical effect and safety profile for the conditions of use specified in the labeling. Therapeutic equivalence codes for approved ANDA drug products are generally listed in the Orange Book at the time of approval, and therapeutic equivalence evaluations for approved 505(b)(2) drug products will generally be conducted upon receipt of a request from the application holder. And with that, I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you for that great presentation. We'll now move into our Q&A panel discussion that includes our previous presenters and James Myers, Director of the Division of Regulatory Policy, Office of New Drug Policy, Office of New Drugs, CDER. We'll now turn over to Lisa to facilitate the Q&A panel. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. All right, our first question is going to be for Elizabeth. Does FDA assign a TE code to drug products with tentative approval?
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for that question. No, a drug product that is tentatively approved is not approved for marketing and would not be listed in the Orange Book, so therefore would not be assigned a TE code.
Great, thank you. And another question for you. Does packaging affect a therapeutic equivalence determination?
So drug products that vary in packaging may be therapeutically equivalent to each other. However, if the packaging difference results in a different clinical effect or safety profile of the drug product, it would not be considered therapeutically equivalent.
Great, thank you. And our next question is for Kendra. What do the second letters mean for A codes? Specifically, what do B, A, N, O, P, and T stand for?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for that question. So the second letter for A-rated products, the second letter of the TE code is intended to provide additional information about the therapeutic equivalence determination. So, for example, for the code AB, the B in that code is intended to convey that any potential bioequivalence problems have been resolved with evidence. And then for the remainder of the codes, such as AA, AN, AO, AP, the second letter identifies the dosage form for that therapeutic equivalence determination.
Great, thank you, Kendra. And another question for you. Why do some products ATE?
I'm sorry, Lisa, do you mind repeating your last?
Sure, Kendra. Why do some products letter TE?
Okay, thank you for repeating. In some instances, products in the Orange Book will have three-letter TE codes because there might be more than one reference-listed drug of the same strength that has been designated under the same heading, if you will. So when I say same heading, I mean that there is another reference product that may have an identical active ingredient, dosage form, and or route of administration.
Great, thank you. And this next question is for James Myers, who's joined us for the panel. Can you describe a situation in which a 505(b)(2) application could be both eligible for submission and approval as a 505(b)(2) application and potentially eligible for a therapeutic equivalence evaluation?
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for that question. So as Elizabeth noted in her prior presentation, differences between a drug product approved in a 505(b)(2) application and a listed drug will generally preclude a finding that the products are therapeutically equivalent. However, there may be limited circumstances in which a 505(b)(2) application could be eligible for a therapeutic equivalence rating. So for example, FDA's regulations limit differences in inactive ingredients between generic products and their RLDs for certain dosage forms. So it's possible that, for example, a parenteral drug product that is pharmaceutically equivalent to a listed drug, but differs from a listed drug with respect to its inactive ingredients in a way that's not permissible for a generic drug, may be eligible for submission and approval as a 505(b)(2) application. In that case, if such a product under the 505(b)(2) application otherwise meets the criteria for therapeutic equivalence, namely that the product is pharmaceutically equivalent and bioequivalent to the listed drug, and that the product could be expected to have the same clinical effect and safety profile when administered to patients under the conditions specified in the labeling, such a 505(b)(2) application might be eligible for a therapeutic equivalence rating. Thank you.
Great, thank you, James. And we have another question for you. How can the holder of an approved 505(b)(2) application request a therapeutic equivalence evaluation for their approved drug product?
So thanks for that question. So a person seeking to have a therapeutic equivalence rating for a drug product approved in a 505(b)(2) application may petition the agency through the citizen petition procedure. And for additional background on the citizen petition procedure, more information can be found at our regulations at 21 CFR 10.25a, in particular 21 CFR 10.30.
Great, thank you, James. Our next question is for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, will a generic drug device combination product be therapeutically equivalent to its reference?
So that it's possible. The extent to which any differences may exist between the proposed generic combination product and the RLD it's referencing affect the provability of the ANDA, that will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you. Another question for you. What if we disagree with a TE code listed in the ordinance?
I think if you disagree with the code listed or want to dispute maybe a listed code, what you can do is submit a citizen petition, the same route that James was just describing.
Great, thank you. And our next question is for Kendra. Kendra, does FDA assign TE codes to OTC products?
So thank you, Elizabeth. For OTC products, so therapeutic equivalence is intended to denote pharmacy level substitution. So for OTC products, patients have the ability to self-select that those particular products, and so therefore we do not assign TE codes to those OTC products. However, for products from which a patient or consumer may get from their pharmacy, the therapeutic equivalence code is designed to, provide information on which of those products can be substituted for one another.
Thank you, Kendra. Our next question is for James. Do 505(b)(2) applications require demonstration of equivalence, bioequivalence, and same clinical effect safety profile to an RLD? If not, would those studies be required for the applicant holder to receive a TE code via citizen's petition?
Thanks, Lisa, and thanks for that question. So, yes, as indicated previously, a 505(b)(2) application like an ANDA seeking to establish therapeutic equivalence to a particular drug would have to meet the applicable requirements for therapeutic equivalence, namely that the product is pharmaceutically equivalent and bioequivalent to the applicable listed drug, and that the product could be expected to have the same clinical effect and safety profile when administered to patients under the conditions specified in the labeling. One thing to note about 505(b)(2) applications that differs with respect to ANDAs is that ANDAs are statutorily required to establish bioequivalence to their RLD. In the case of 505(b)(2) applications, that's not a statutory requirement for approval, and so it would depend on the particular product at issue with respect to the 505(b)(2) application and whether they did in fact establish bioequivalence in connection with the original approval of the B2, or if for other reasons they elected to establish bioequivalence to another listed drug post-approval. Regardless of the means by which they would do it, the criteria for TE would still be the same, and so they would need to have sufficient data and information to establish that they had met the applicable requirements for TE.
Thank you, James. Our next question is for Elizabeth. Will the FDA assign a TE code if the ANDA is approved based on the reference standard if the RLS has been withdrawn for other than safety and efficacy reasons?
So if the RLD was withdrawn and there are other approved ANDAs listed in the Orange Book, the newly approved ANDA would have the same TE code as those other approved ANDAs.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. Our next question is for Kendra. What does it mean if there is no TE code for a drug product listed in the Orange Book?
So when a product listed in the Orange Book does not have a TE code, it means that the product is single source. And what I mean by single source is that there are no other products in the actively marketed section, so that's the prescription section of the Orange Book, that have the same active ingredient, dosage form, route of administration, and strength. There could be some of those similar products in the discontinued section, but the therapeutic equivalence code is really intended to reflect the substitutability of actively marketed products. And so we don't show therapeutic equivalence codes for those products in the discontinued section of the Orange Book.
Thank you, Kendra. And we have another question for you. If a drug product is repackaged or distributed by someone other than the applicant, will it be given a TE?
So one thing to note, the Orange Book itself only lists drug product applications by the applicant holder name. We don't list the listing. We don't have listings for labelers, repackagers, or distributors. However, any drug product that is repackaged or distributed or relabeled by someone other than the applicant, for example, such as an authorized generic drug, is considered to be therapeutically equivalent to the applicant holder's product, even if in the Orange Book it's that product itself is listed as single source or not having a TE code, or even if it's listed as non-equivalent to another product in the Orange Book.
Great, thank you so much, Kendra. And our next question and last question is for James. Why would a 505(b)(2) product not request therapeutic equivalence?
Thanks, Lisa. So as I indicated previously, and as Elizabeth noted in her presentation, in most cases, 505(b)(2) products will differ in a substantive way from a listed drug upon which they're relying in a way that generally will preclude a finding that the products are therapeutically equivalent. And as I mentioned, there is a narrow subset of 505(b)(2) applications that could be eligible for a therapeutic equivalence rating, depending on the particular circumstances at issue with the relevant product. And so I think as a practical matter, in most cases, most 505(b)(2) applications wouldn't be eligible for a therapeutic equivalence rating, and thus, in many cases, it practically wouldn't make sense to request a therapeutic equivalence rating, given that such products, in most cases, very likely would not even be pharmaceutically equivalent to begin with. Thanks.
Great, thank you, James, Elizabeth, and Kendra for answering questions and for your presentations. And with that, I'll pass